Let's just go get my app. So about that app, I'm going on a big trip to Japan in exactly 1 month, and I've had countless friends give me advice about where to go, what to eat, what to do. But all I have to show for it are Word docs, travel guides, how to learn Japanese in 10 minutes. But what if I could take all of these documents and images and make an application that I can interact with? First, we need to identify which AWS ingredients we need for this task. We're definitely going to need some Amazon Bedrock, some Amazon S3, of course, some code, and perhaps a little sprinkle of Amazon Q Developer. And the glue that ties this all together, RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. Quick side note, RAG is a technique to extend the already powerful capabilities of LLMs into specific domains, like Japan, or to use a specific company's private data sources, maybe like a law firm or a medical company, but without the need to retrain the underlying model. It's a cost-effective approach to improving an LLM output for better accuracy, better results, and generally to improve the performance through various contexts. If you'd like to dive deeper on RAG, check out Sebastian's video here for more information. Now in this video, we'll be diving into the Bedrock feature that makes RAG easy to get started with quickly on AWS, and that's Bedrock Knowledge Bases. Specifically, to help with my trip to Japan, I want to take advantage of the new multimodal capabilities that recently launched. Applications can now process both text and visual elements across a variety of documents and images, which means I can give our foundation model data like specific transit maps, region-specific travel brochures, and more. Of course, all of this alongside traditional textual sources. Let's take it to the demo to understand how this works. I'll be showing first the knowledge base setup on the console, and then we'll interact with the application with some code later on. So I'm here in the AWS Management Console, and we've navigated over to the Amazon Bedrock splash page. So to the left here on the Builder Tools pane, I want to go ahead and click Knowledge Bases. And we'll open up here to the creation screen. So using this big, bright orange button, we'll hit the Create button. First, we'll see 3 items that drop here. So there's 3 choices for how we want to actually interact with our knowledge base. We'll be doing a vector store today, but you'll see that there's 2 new options as well for structured data stores and GenAI indexes with Kendra. For this demo, we'll be using the vector store, so we'll go ahead and click that. And we'll first take care of some admin tasks like naming the knowledge base. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll want to make sure that we have the proper IAM permissions. So here I will be using an existing role. And then for our data source, this demo will use S3, where I'm going to put in all those images and text files that I'll actually want to interact later on with. So we'll go ahead and select S3 here and move on to the next screen. Now here, we're going to be configuring that data source. So we'll want to find the S3 bucket where we're going to be putting in all these images and files. And again, we'll want to name this data source. So let's go ahead and give this a name. And we'll find that S3 bucket that we've previously created. Okay, now this is a main part here in the new multimodal feature. So the parsing strategy that we select here is basically how Bedrock Knowledge Bases will understand how it will actually process both images and text in our knowledge base. So there's 3 options that we see here. The first is Amazon Bedrock as a default parser. This right now doesn't support multimodal use cases. So we'll want to go down here to the third option where we see foundation models as a parser. And you see that once we do that, there's 2 options that drop down for us. Cloud Sonnet v1 and then Cloud 3 Haiku v1. For this demo, we'll be using 3.5 Sonnet, so we'll go ahead and select that. And you can leave these other options here as default. In the next screen here, because we're using a vector store for this knowledge base, we want to select an embeddings model. So we'll go ahead and click here. And you'll see that there's two options for us. And we'll go ahead and select the Titan Text Embeddings V2. Okay, next option here shows us which vector database we want to be using. In our case, we're keeping things simple, so we'll just use the recommended OpenSearch serverless, and that'll be the default option that's selected here. Moving on to the next screen, this will just show us where we're reviewing all of the aspects of the knowledge base we've just created. So scroll on down to the bottom and hit Create Knowledge Base. Let's take a short coffee break, stretch our fingers while this process completes. Okay, with coffee now in hand, let me show you what data I'm adding to this knowledge base to help support my trip planning use case. So we'll take it back here to the S3 console. And I mentioned earlier, there's that S3 bucket where I've been uploading documents and images that I want the foundation model to learn from. So we'll look at here what some of these images are. And I'll pull this up in my local file just so that it's easier to access. So again, here we have the Tokyo travel map. So a variety of different subway line stations. I don't know about you, but going to Japan can get really gnarly, like this crazy railway system that I'm showing here. So there's a lot to definitely understand about Tokyo subway lines. I've also added some other images like a flyer for a museum, and this one's all in Japanese. So we'll see how Bedrock handles that. Some other items I've added here, again, I mentioned that this is both documents and images. So this screenshot here is a clip from a tour guide book that basically just talks about how to get around in Tokyo, useful stations, useful information about their subway line passes and things like that. But it is an image, so it's an image with text. So Bedrock will have to understand how to extract some of that information to use it later on. So with that in mind, let's get out of there. Okay, so we'll head back to our knowledge base that was being created while I was getting some coffee. And good news, it looks like it was done. So let's go ahead and start interacting with it. Quick note here, I did have a couple of hard to debug errors syncing files from S3 to the knowledge base. Two things you'll want to watch out for. One, you'll want to make sure you're using the right file type. Bedrock Knowledge Bases only accepts certain file types for the images for multimodal parsing. And then two, you'll want to make sure that your file types are in the correct size. I had a couple of them that were a little too big. So as of this recording, the knowledge base sizes for JPEGs and PNGs are 3.75 megabytes. So just be careful that your images are at or below that size. And then if all else fails, I found that converting my JPEGs to PNGs solved most of my issues. Now I can test out some queries and functionality. While I could do this on the console directly, and you'll see that here in the knowledge base screen, there's to the right here, you can test the knowledge base directly on the console. I'm actually going to do this with a Python Flask application that interacts directly with the Bedrock API and also gives me a nice GUI to display the results. So let's take a look at the code here now. There's a couple of things that I want to call out. Now, I mentioned there were some sprinkles here earlier, and this is where my cheat code is with QDeveloper. It's my first time building a Flask app, so I interacted with QDeveloper in my IDE to get me to this code here. So just a side note, if you're not sure how to do something with QDeveloper, I found that it was super easy to do this app that you see here. Pretty impressive, and I can continue to interact with it as I want to improve some of the UI elements. So in the code here, we'll see a couple of things, right? The Flask app is going to create basically just a basic website for me where a user can interact with that Bedrock knowledge base and ask some questions of their travel data. So my travel data in this case. Okay, so first things here, we'll see a couple of items. There's a call to the Bedrock knowledge base. And this part here is basically just giving Bedrock the ability to understand that I want to use a knowledge base, understands that it's my knowledge base that we've just created. So I'm passing in here the knowledge base ID. We'll also want to make sure that we pass in the model ARN and then the region. So in this case, I'll be using 3.5 Sonnet again, and then the rest here are just basically some elements for that website to render properly. So I'll go ahead here and run this code. And I'm hosting this locally just for the purposes of this demo. So this will open here on a local port. And we'll see here my very basic GUI that will interact with queries here. So I can say things like, let's see, I'm landing at Narita Airport in a month. So how do I get from Narita to JR Tokyo Station, right? Let's see. Okay, so we'll go ahead and submit that query. And we'll see at the bottom here, at this point, the knowledge base is handling the query. We can see that in the code here as well. There's a get method being sent. The query has been posted, and we see the response here. So based on the images that I showed earlier that are inside this knowledge base, Bedrock has basically taken all of those extractions, and we can see here the result, right? So I have three main options to get from Narita International Airport to the JR Tokyo Station. The screenshot or the images that this knowledge base has have some examples with costs, and that's why this result here shows us not only the time it takes to get to these stations, but also how much it can cost. So that's one example there. And I know what you might be thinking, this is cool, but how do we know it's actually using those images that I uploaded earlier? So we can actually go back to the console here real quick. And when I make a query, so we'll do that same query that we did from the front end over here. And once that's done generating, there's actually a way to validate the responses, whether you're in the CLI or on the console. So in the console here, once the response has been generated, I click the Show Details hyperlink, and we can see here that Bedrock can actually indicate which of the chunks it's using for citing this information back to us. So in this case, this was the question about getting to the airport from a station, and I can see the image here. So this is the image that it's being pulled from, that information. So like I mentioned earlier, there's information about the price and the directions, but this is an image that has been used to extract this information and then relay it to us much more smooth and cleaner than just kind of flipping through a guidebook. Now, what else could we ask in this case? So one of the main things I want to be doing when I go to Japan is get some cool knives. I know there's a lot of really good kitchen shops or cooking shops in Japan, but I don't know anything about knives myself. So let's ask a question here where I say, what kinds of knives can I buy in Japan? Okay, so we'll submit that query. And again, I can see what's going on in the back end with the query being posted. And here's the result, right? So the response here says Japanese kitchen knives come in several different distinct types. Here are some of the different purpose knives you can use. And so it breaks down for me a variety of different knives, right? There's here we can see Santoku, an all-purpose knife ideal for vegetables. Again, where is this information coming from? I'll show you the image that Bedrock is pulling from in this case. So I've given it a couple of images on these kinds of different knives. The image is pretty kind of bare minimum. All you can see here are just some veggies at the top and some fruits, but Bedrock is able to understand that this image is actually giving information about each of the knives based on this kind of diagram here. So that's pretty cool. Now, I mentioned earlier there was that brochure about a museum that I uploaded to the knowledge base, but it was all in Japanese. And I wanted to test out if Bedrock could actually understand how to translate some of these characters. So I'm going to ask here, what can I find at the Kamakura Museum, which is where that flyer is from? And while we do that, I'll actually bring up the flyer again so that we can take a look. All I can really see here in English is the name of the museum and maybe some dates. But besides that, these are all Japanese characters, so pretty hard for me to understand what's going on here. But when I give that information to Bedrock, the response here about what I can find at this museum based on that flyer is some information about the exhibition, right? So it's letting me know that there's currently a local exhibition happening from, and this is dated flyer from 2019, but it's able to understand the characters. And you can actually see here, it's translating directly the characters into the name of the exhibition and then even a subtitle here. So what we can see here is in the knowledge base, when I'm asking queries, even in the multimodal responses, Bedrock can actually translate some of these for me as well while I'm making the queries, which is pretty neat. One last thing I'll show here. I mentioned earlier there was that kind of gnarly transit map that I'm showing again here. Um, it's pretty hard to understand kind of where all the stations are here, or perhaps even where our particular transit stop is amongst the various transit lines. So, what if I were to ask something specific about what transit line is the Ikebukuro station on? So let's see if Bedrock can actually pull from an image like this one where a specific station is. Now, I can see here, this is Ikebukuro kind of in the middle of the map, but I don't know about you. I can't really tell what line it's on, but let's see what Bedrock comes up with. Okay, so the response here is telling us the Ikebukuro station is served by the Narita Express line, which connects to the international airport and also gives us a transit time of 85 minutes. So, again, pretty cool stuff from Bedrock here as it's able to interpret this particular image. And this is just the start of the kinds of things we can ask. I hope this gives you a demonstration of what's possible with the new multimodal knowledge bases. Again, we're only scratching the surface here of what this capability will bring to new applications that require contextual information from company private data sources with both documents and images. For step-by-step instructions and additional information on the new Amazon Bedrock multimodal capabilities, check out the links in the description. And leave a comment with what other visual elements you would like to see an LLM handle for my trip planning. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.